For the second time this season, the Mets got swept in a doubleheader as they dropped their series to the Baltimore Orioles. One series remains for this squad in the first half of the season, first half in air quotes. And everybody's wondering why the Mets aren't using their good prospects to help their big league club. Welcome in to another edition of the Bleav in Mets podcast. Chris Schubert, Jack McKessie back with you talking all things Mets. Jack, how are you, my friend?
Chris, I was good after the first game of this Orioles series. I was good through 7 innings of the second game of this Orioles series. And now I'm not quite as good as I was hoping to be when we started recording this podcast episode because, like you said, Mets got swept in that doubleheader game or those doubleheader games. And it kind of looks like they're limping into the All-Star break right now is, I guess, how I would put it.
It's funny that you say that they're limping into the All-Star break because vibes-wise, I 100% agree with you. But at the end of this podcast, we're going to preview a series in which Kodai Senga and Sean Manaea are returning to the rotation for the team. So it does feel like a little bit of the opposite when it comes to the health front. But yeah, a extremely disappointing series for the New York Mets after rallying in the first game, a fantastic 8th inning that you thought was going to be the spark of something that was going to just allow this team to go on a run, to claim their 3rd straight series win, and just keep things rolling into the All-Star break. But unfortunately, all their good luck, all their good momentum was halted. Rain washed out Wednesday's game. They played a doubleheader on Thursday, and it was a disaster across the board for the New York Mets, blowing a 1-0 lead in the 8th inning, and then going to an opener, spot starter, bullpen game, however you want to describe it, in the second game of this series, which makes the pain of blowing the 1-0 lead in the first game of the doubleheader all the more painful. Jack, do you want to start with the David Peterson decision? Do we want to start with Brendan Waddell and Justin Hageman getting spot starts for this team? I mean, there's so much to unpack from a pitching perspective here for the Mets. Where would you like us to begin?
I guess chronologically, we can start with David Peterson. And I mean, he's fully back. We also need to mention that he is now officially an all-star.
That's right. Our all-star. Hashtag our all-star.
Our all-star ace, David Peterson. He looks like that bounce back was legit. Like he is back to form. Those 2 rough starts are in the rearview mirror now. And I am fully back on board for supporting David Peterson in every start. I look forward to them once again. And then things fell apart very quickly as soon as he left. And I think, Chris, the biggest questions here are with the decision-making, with Carlos Mendoza deciding to go to Ryan Stanek. I, in the moment, was okay with the hook. I understood when you get to the 8th inning, and obviously Petey had been cruising, but he started to give up a little bit more hard hit contact in the 7th. And so you give him, as long as he doesn't allow any base runners, with one lefty coming up to start the 8th, and then obviously single, you pull him. But then you bring in righty Ryan Stanek, and you just know the Orioles have Gunnar Henderson, a lefty hitter, waiting on their bench. And of course, I can't remember the name of their interim manager off the top of my head right now, but he pulls in Gunnar Henderson to pinch hit, and what do you know? He hits the 2-run homer that puts the Orioles ahead for good in this game, and you're left wondering if Carlos Mendoza made the right call going to Ryan Stanek and in general pivoting to the bullpen after 7+ strong innings from PD.
I think there are multiple different ways to discuss this decision. And I've heard a lot of people weigh in on the choice by Carlos Mendoza to lift David Peterson and not allow him to continue. There is an argument that you know that you're playing a second game. Every out that David Peterson can give you frees you up to manage more aggressively in the second game of the doubleheader. The more high leverage relievers you avoid in the first game of the doubleheader allows you, if you're holding on to a 1-0 lead, use Reed Garrett, use Ryan Stanek, use Edwin Diaz. Again, aggressively approach the second game because you didn't have to burn those guys in the first game. There's an argument for keeping PD out there with how well he pitched to do exactly that. David Peterson was pitching well enough to work himself out of that jam. All of that can be true. And if it was me, and if I was the person sitting in Carlos Mendoza's seat and I was forced to make this decision, I would have stuck with David Peterson. That being said, I don't think there is enough criticism on Ryan Stanek in this discourse.
Yes.
Stanek has to come through in those moments. there is not an argument to the contrary. If he is going to be one of your high leverage relievers, Edwin Diaz is your closer. Reed Garrett and Ryan Stanek are your trusted veteran setup men that are supposed to bridge the gap. If Ryan Stanek cannot come in a situation like that and get out of that jam, then he should not be a setup man for a team that is trending to be going to the playoffs. So two things can be true. Should David Peterson have stayed in that game and be given the opportunity to get out of it? And if he's the guy who gives it up, okay, no problem. Go get him in the second game. Absolutely. But in the same breath, Ryan Stanek is supposed to be one of the setup men of this team, and he couldn't execute. So I think he needs to be removed from that role. He cannot be trusted. He's had way too many blowups like this season. Keep him away from the Baltimore, Maryland, D.C. metro area. It just feels like that's where things go sideways for Ryan Stanek. So hopefully it doesn't look like you're going to see the Orioles or the Nationals at any point in the postseason, but he needs to be removed from the role. And you need to make it a priority that this team needs a high leverage setup man because Ryan Stanek isn't cutting it. Also, in the same breath, the offense needs to score more than one run. We can get on Carlos Mendoza, and it is my biggest criticism of him. I think his handling of the pitching staff, both ways, sticking with a starter too long or with not taking a starter out or taking a starter out too early. On both ends of the spectrum, I think he has made some mistakes this season. He deserves all the criticism in the world. The offense needs to score more runs. Ryan Stanek, it's not like they turn to, no offense, Rico Garcia in that spot, or Richard Lovelady in that spot, or Austin Warren in that spot. Ryan Stanek is up in this spot because he's supposed to be one of your eighth inning guys that can get you those outs, and he didn't get it done. That's a problem.
And recently he had been, it looked like, bounced back from those rough Nats outings where he was electric in some 4-out situations in recent series. And that was part of the reason that, while I didn't love the hook on Petey after allowing the runner on, I thought, like you said, he had been pitching well enough to get out of that. I thought going into Stanek's outing that things would be okay. You get the bridge to Diaz, especially after the previous night. Diaz looked good. And instead, like, it wasn't just the home run to Gunnar Henderson to give up the lead. It was the complete lack of command after that. Like, he just completely imploded, could not find the strike zone, kept walking guys. And frankly, a lot of those at-bats, like, it wasn't really close. Like, he wasn't working counts, really. He was just kind of falling behind quickly and allowing runners on. And then obviously they got one more on the sac fly, but it just felt like this is the Ryan Stanek of the lower rungs of the trust tree, the ones that fall off the trust tree. And there's too much polarization with him being electric for 4 outs and him not able to find the strike zone in a situation where the Mets just gave up one of their worst losses of the season.
Yeah, this is the Ryan Stanek when he was first traded here, right? Where he was struggling and it was not, they traded for him and he was supposed to be a fix to their bullpen problems. He was supposed to add length to it. And you were worried about whether or not he was even going to be able to make a postseason roster with how much he struggled in the month of August. And then you get into the second game of this series, and that leads to the other big conversation coming out of this series loss to the Baltimore Orioles, is the Mets went to another bullpen game. They went to another spot starter. Brendan Waddell was the name that was drawn out of the hat. He started a couple of innings. Justin Hageman was the piggyback off of him. Those guys combined to give up 6 runs, 5 of them earned, and it has brought forth a very fair conversation about what the Mets are doing when they have 2 pitchers down in the minor leagues, 2 of their top prospects that are setting the world on fire. I mean, Nolan McLean, his last time out, went 6 innings and struck out 10. Brendan Sproat is in the middle of 18 consecutive scoreless innings over his last couple of outings. It's not like the Mets are out of options and they don't have anybody in AAA that can help them. They have 2 guys in the minors that can help them. Now, allow me to be fair and objective, because I know exactly the reason why the Mets and David Stearns are not promoting these prospects. If they call either of these guys up, they want it to be permanent. They don't want to play the roster churn that they have been doing with everybody else in their bullpen over the last couple of weeks and in their rotation while these injuries have plagued them as a team. If they call these guys up, if they add them to the 40-man roster, it is a permanent, for good solution or answer. So I get that. But I'm sorry, you're telling me that this team doesn't want to make room for Nolan McLean, doesn't want to make room for Brandon Sproat? Guess what? Call him up, and you know what you can do? You can keep him up. Just keep him in the bullpen. Keep them as an option. Keep them as somebody who can be a sixth starter. We know that when Kodai Senga is healthy, they want to have a six-man rotation. They want to give Senga the extra day off. So you're going to need a sixth starter anyway. Why can't Brandon Sproat? And the thing that frustrates me the most is David Stearns did this. He did this with his top prospects in Milwaukee, where he called them up in the second half of the year and he used them as kind of these multi-inning piggybacks, relievers, where they weren't going full starts. They kept their innings under wraps. I know he did it with Brendan Woodruff. I believe he did it with Corbin Burns as well when Burns was coming up, where they called him up and he wasn't a starter right away. He was a multi-inning piggyback reliever. And I just don't understand why we have to continue to watch Brendan Waddell and Justin Hageman in those roles when it could just be Nolan McLean and Brandon Sproat in those roles. And you're not stunting their development because there are going to be turns through this rotation. Guess what? You want to put the governor on Clay Holmes? You want to skip a turn through his rotation? This is where Brandon Sproat and Nolan McLean help you out. Like I am usually the David Stearns defender. We tend to be a pro David Stearns podcast, and I understand the logic here. But if you're worried about the roster juggling here, just call them up and keep them up. There are roles for them. Why can't these guys do what Jose Budo was doing last year? Why can't they do what Huascar Braziman has been doing all season long?
Yeah. I also don't understand, to that end, why you also have a guy that has had some major league experience who has looked like he's pretty consistently improving, and it's little by little. But in Blade Tidwell, you have a guy who's been piggybacking in roles like that where he needs to be a spot starter, or sometimes he has an opener and takes the bulk role for 3 or 4 innings. And on top of that, the Mets have already announced that they're planning to do that with a veteran in Sean Manaea with Clay Holmes next series. So you know that this is something that they have considered, at least with other players. And so I'm with you, Chris. I don't understand why we have to watch Brandon Waddell and Justin Hageman struggle through 5 to 6 mediocre innings and give up the game before it really even begins for the team, especially when the offense is coming off of a 1 for 11 with runners in scoring position game earlier that same day. It's very frustrating to watch because we've seen it over and over again this season. If the starting pitching in air quotes here for Waddell and Hageman are unable to keep wraps on the opponent offense, the Mets offense kind of struggles and presses and isn't able to really come back other than they did in the first game of the series. But it's just like you're not letting the team stay in games with roster decisions like the ones that we saw the Mets make in the third game of this series.
A bullpen game every once in a while when an injury catches you by surprise and you have to just fill in one turn through the rotation, I think is fine, is acceptable. It's going to happen over the course of a season. You're maneuvering your roster. You're going to have games like that. It happened twice this week. Like twice the Mets did this. And I think that's the thing that is so frustrating is that the Mets right now, I know they're going to get Sean Manaea back and that's going to fill in this rotation. And so now they're going to have 5 guys, but they're going to need a 6th starter at some point in the second half of the year. And I caution against being this optimistic about it, but with Senga coming back tonight, with Manaea coming back over the weekend, I think post All-Star break, you're going to see this rotation settle back into what it was supposed to look like, and everybody is going to take their turn through. And I am truly of the belief, maybe this is me drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit, but the next time the Mets are going to need somebody, it's going to be one of these two. I think the noise has gotten so loud. I think the Mets understand that now they're getting into the end game. This is the late part of the season. They can't afford to give games away the way that they have been doing it through the first half with these bullpen. I think they're 3-9 in these types of games this season. They're just giving away opportunities to be up multiple games in the NL East on the Phillies right now. I strongly believe that when this situation comes up again in the second half, it will be Nolan McLean or Brandon Sproat in that spot.
I think you're probably right. I think there are a lot of factors to consider. Obviously, we have to know what Senga and Manaea look like coming back from injury, Paul Blackburn, Tyler McGill, like what the calculus is for them, as well as the trade deadline coming up. Like, do the Mets acquire a starter to push into their rotation as a 6th man? Do they evaluate what they have in the minor leagues and prefer pulling up with someone like Nolan McLean or Brandon Sproat to fill that role instead? I am with you that I'm cautiously optimistic that I think it's going to be one of those minor league guys because it looks from everything we've seen recently for both of those guys, Sproat and McLean, that they're ready to contribute at the major league level. It's just a matter of how do they factor in the rest of the injured guys already on the major league roster, as well as what happens ahead of the trade deadline here in 3-ish weeks.
Now, I will say this. I don't think they can live in a world with their roster, barring an injury, where both can be on the roster at the same time. I think that limits you in your bullpen. One of them can be in there. And I think, the perfect scenario, and I think I've said this on the podcast before, is one of those guys starts, throws 2 or 3 innings, 3 innings, 4 innings, and then Clay Holmes works off of that person. That's your way to limit Clay Holmes's innings, keep him on a schedule, but have him ready to go for a big run in September. And you get to use Nolan McLean and or Brandon Sproat to help instead of watching Brent. No offense, but I'm tired of watching Brendan Waddell and Justin Hageman. I want to see Brandon Sproat and Nolan McLean do that. And I don't think it hurts their development because, if anything, I think it helps them because there's not pressure of going out there and needing to throw 6, 7 scoreless innings. Hey, dude, throw 3 innings. Give me 3 of your best innings.
And I'm not worried about Clay Holmes coming out of the bullpen because
he's done it before.
Newsflash, he's a reliever, historically a reliever.
Right.
So yeah, I'm with you. I think it's a system that makes sense. And again, like they're already planning to do something similar in this coming week with Sean Manaea coming back and piggybacking off of a Clay Holmes start. Or maybe vice versa.
And so that's why I think they just want to get through the first half. They want to reset as an organization. They want to start the second half. And the first time this type of spot comes up, I think they will execute this plan. And also, if you're worried about that, because their 40 minutes full right now, if I'm remembering correctly. No, they have according to Fangraphs, they have 2 open spots in their 40 man. So they don't even need to worry about adding either of them. But if they were under a roster crunch, you have 4 pitchers, Paul Blackburn, Jose Butto, Max Kranick, and Dednell Nunez, who are on the 15 IL. Any of those injuries, if they're severe enough, can be moved to the 60-day IL to free up the roster spot. Who knows what's going on with Jesse Winker's back? That could easily turn into a 60-day IL thing. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have 6 players on the injured list right now that are taking up 40-man roster spots. So very easily, if they were under a crunch, which again, they're not, they have 2 open spots according to Fangraphs, they have options on their roster. And I know when Sean Manaea comes back, he will need to take one of those spots. So that puts you with 1 opening as of the moment. But they just put Tyler McGill on. They just transitioned him to the 60-day IL. So we're not going to see him for a little bit, probably not till the end of August, if not beginning of September at the earliest. So there's ways to do this. You can DFA any of the relievers that you've been churning through all season long. So the roster gymnastics, I hear you. I understand it as an argument, but at the same time, I cannot watch these Brendan Waddell, Justin Hageman giving away games. Like the moment they lost the game against Peterson, you're just immediately worried that they just got swept in the doubleheader because they're not throwing out a legitimate starter. They're behind the 8 ball. And you knew even when they scored 2 runs in the first inning, when you saw how the bottom of the first went, when Waddell had to work out of a bases loaded jam, you're like, okay, they're going to have to win this game 7-6. Like you just knew offense was going to be needed. And right now they're not hitting because, spoiler alert, I don't know if anybody's new here to the podcast, but the bottom of the order does not contribute on a consistent enough basis for this franchise right now.
It's really hard to watch. It's like what happened in that second game when I saw who was due up for the 9th inning for the Mets, and it was the 7, 8, 9 hitters. I was like, I think this game is over. I think I'm safe to turn it off. I don't have faith if it's not a situation like the first game of the series where they have the Fab Four, as Steve Cohen called them, of Nimmo, Lindor, Soto, and Alonso due up, or any of them due up. The game just feels over because Tyrone Taylor, he is an amazing defender. He made a great play in, I think, the second game of the series, the first doubleheader, throwing out a runner at third base.
Yes.
And
they played great defense in that game too, all across the board. Great defense.
Catching a ball colliding with Juan Soto in that same game. Like he is a very good defender. He is not hitting right now. And to his credit, he actually did have the 1 hit with the runner in scoring position in the second game of the series. But like outside of that, I don't want to see him taking these at-bats from, say, a Jeff McNeil. And Luis Torrens, the catcher's position in general, is another black hole on the roster in the lineup.
Can I stop you right there? Can I stop you right there? Because
yeah,
talking about Tyrone Taylor and Luis Torrens, I was thinking about this a little bit yesterday after they lost the second game. I can accept 1 spot in your lineup being a defensive first. Offense is going to be few and far between spot, right? Like if it was just Tyrone Taylor, I could accept Tyrone Taylor hitting 195 because you're getting excellent defense.
And that's what he was last year, right?
Right. If it was just Luis Torrens giving us excellent defense, faking out Ramon Laureano the other night,
Yeah.
picking off runners at second base, right? Playing great defense overall at the catcher's position. If it was just him and the rest of the lineup was more consistent, okay, I can accept that. I wouldn't complain. But guess what? It's center field. It's right now it's second base when Jeff McNeil's playing center field.
Yeah.
It's third base.
Third
It's the
base.
catcher spot. It's now the DH because
DH.
Winker's hurt again.
Yeah.
That's 5 spots in the lineup every day that are just an automatic, just nothing.
Yeah.
Hence why the Fab Four.
Right. It's literally the top 4 in this lineup and then everybody else in some order. And it doesn't really matter because for the most part, they're just not contributing at all. And I will say the one good news or one of the biggest bright spots, I guess, from this past series, Mark Vientos looks like he's starting to.
I know, but then he had the offer in the second game.
I know.
It just.
But to match his hit total from the last month and a half in one game, that was a good sign. And he was driving the ball in general. Like even some of his outs were like hard hit, deep outfield flyouts. And then obviously he had the double that he almost got thrown out on as well. But like if the Mets can at least get one more bat, 2 more if you count Jeff McNeil with Vientos and McNeil in that lineup, it looks a little bit more dangerous. But again, that center field catcher DH / third base / second base situation right now is horrific, and it's not fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, there's moments where Brett Beatty looks awesome, and Beatty's racked up a ton of RBIs. There's moments where Ronnie Mauricio shows you the quick bat speed and the ability to hit for power. Now, Ronnie's playing great defense, so you continue to want him out there because he adds great defense. But guess what? Now that's 3 players. That's Torrens, that's Taylor, and Mauricio that I'm putting in for defense first. It's just too many holes, too many weak spots in your lineup to be able to contribute enough offense to back up your starting pitching. Now, listen, it's not all bad news. Let's transition into a preview, and this will be a quicker episode because we're releasing this day that the Mets start their 3-game series, a 2015 World Series rematch between the Mets and the Kansas City Royals in Kansas City, because it's Kodai Senga Day tonight, Jack. It'll be Sean Manaea Day on Sunday. So not everything is negative as the Mets, after this weekend, fingers crossed that all things go according to plan and all things go well, the Mets will have their projected opening day rotation from the start of spring in action over the weekend, and they'll open the second half with all of those guys ready to go.
Fingers crossed. I'm praying nothing goes wrong with Senga specifically.
Don't cover first base, Kodai. Just don't cover it. It's okay.
You're good. If a run scores and you save your hamstring and calf, I'm okay with it. I don't I am so worried about him just trying to field his position anymore at this point, especially like his history of having one start back from an injury and then imploding again. But I'm just hoping for no injuries, and I'm excited to see Sean Manaea pitch again because he was so much fun to watch down the stretch last year.
Yeah, get to the All-Star break healthy, get to the All-Star break on a good note, right? Win the series against Kansas City over the weekend, and I think the All-Star break will give us an opportunity to reset. They open up the second half with Cincinnati, and then the trade deadline will be right on the corner, and so that will start to ramp up. We know the Mets are going to be active in that regard. So it's as simple as, can the Fab Four do what they've been doing over the last couple of weeks? It's really a question every single night of which of the others steps up and contributes, if anybody. And what does this starting pitching look like now that Kodai Senga is returning to the rotation, and we're going to get to see Sean Manaea on Sunday. So I'm looking forward to this series. Should be a fun one. Great way to finish up the first half. And really the motto is just win this series, end the first half on a good note. You're in a position to be battling for the NL East crown. And I don't think any of us really thought that was going to be in the cards when we started the year with the Braves and the Phillies on paper being the teams that they were. But here the Mets are, with a chance in the second half to win the NL East. So it's just all about ending this first half on a good note, getting that mental break, hitting that reset button. It's good for the coaches. It's good for the players. It's good for everybody to get that rest. And then they're back at it next week. We are back at it after this series concludes on Sunday to break things down, to get you ready for the All-Star break. And then after that, Jack and I don't know when the next pod that we will do is, because Jack and I are going to see each other in person for the Red Series. Jack and I will both be in attendance for the second game of the Red Series, which also happens to be David Wright retirement day and Mets Hall of Fame day. So very much looking forward to that. Probably do a trade deadline episode maybe in between the episode on Monday and that series over the weekend. If you are new here or if you've been listening to us for a long time and you haven't done so, please rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. Helps us out a ton, puts us in the algorithm, continues to help this show grow, and we are expecting big things for the rest of this year and into the future with Bleav in Mets. So we hope that you hit that button, share the show, and join us in the journey. You want to watch the video version of the show, you can do so over on the YouTube channel. Just search Jack McKessy, McKessy, to see the video version of the show over there. The Mets start a 3-game set with the Royals tonight. We are back to break things down on Sunday after that series concludes. Have a good one, Mets fans. And as always, let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.